recording. All right, so for our building, it depends on what you want to talk about and how you want to present it. But for now, we want to pick a good view of this window and maybe this angle. And the most important part is choosing the view. I think for the rendering, it's important to what you want to show and what you want to talk about. People are going to look at that view, and you need to not randomly pick something and just render it. Then after you pick the view, we're going to come in and look at the camera itself. So within here, these tabs, you can actually activate or turn off some of these tabs. If you right click on it or click on the setting here, you can look at the options. Under these options, I don't think we need to see the material. We can have the lights on. I'm going to turn off library, and we don't need to see the rendering. We can see a named view. So this is something I like to automatically come in and add that, named views. You're going to need to use this tab a lot. Lights can help a lot as well, and then the sun. Sun is also something that I like to add into these tabs, so it will be a good shortcut to look at things. Now, name views. Name views is when you are going to create a rendering, you can save the views and you can come back to it and make renderings over and over from the same exact angle that you set. So for example, if you set this wall to be a stone and you change your mind and you want to redo this rendering, you can have this view saved and come back and just change the material of the wall and re-render exactly the same view. You can also create a couple of diagrams if you need to show it to someone and come back and redo that view over and over. How do I do that? I can go under Name View tab. Here, it's a camera, and call and save that view. As you can say, exterior -1. You can also date these, so next person who's going to use your file or your teammate can know when you created this view. I think this is something that you need to come up with your teammate or your colleague about how you save these views and which one is the latest version, or whether they're going to save over this view. Now, something else that it's important to look into is that you can hold shift and right click and zoom in with the same lens, get closer to your image or further away. So I'm keeping control down on my keyboard and right click on my mouse and zooming in, zooming out. You can also pan over here. You can move up and down, or you can hold, you can orbit, change your view, and then save over this again. I just click on the save and hit OK. It's going to ask you that, are you sure you want to save over? And this is what we want to do, yes. Now the next step is we want to make sure that we are looking at things in perspective, but by making all the vertical lines straight. When we look at things in reality, in the real world, maybe when we look up, things might get a little bit distorted, but in your views, please make sure that these lines are not an angle. Sometimes the lens of the camera, it looks at things that it's not perfectly straight. So we do want to make sure that some of these numbers match up. So the simplest way is that I'm going to copy this, Control C, and place it Control V in here. And if I look at it, now it did change the view itself, but it's going to help us to have a better angle. Now I'm going to orbit just a little bit. I want to The Z target is our eye level, so maybe 5 feet is my eye level. You can bring it up or down. You can type in the Z. We're gonna go up or even like 8 feet. You can see that the eye level changes. I'm gonna put it on 5 feet. Now I'm gonna change. This is good. I think if I go zoom in just a little bit would be good. Now I'm gonna go in. I'm happy. I'm gonna save it and hit save. Yes. All right. Now the next step is we're gonna turn on the sun itself. So I can come in on the tab here and click, or I can type sun as a command, and this window will open up for us. I'm going to turn on the sun. Something that Rhino has, and it's very, very useful, is that you actually can find the location of where your building is. We're going to type in Chicago and look into the map and click here. So now we know where we are, but we can also change the date and the month and the hour of where the sun we want to have. So I'm gonna go around maybe June, July. So the sun is higher, it's sharper, and I can change the hour of that day. I'm gonna maybe put it on like 2, 3 p.m. You can also manually type in the time and the date itself, but I think this is fine for now. How do I know where north is in my plan? So if I go to the top view, this is our Y and X axes. North is always facing up based on these axes and anything. And so sun is moving from east to west. So our sun is going to hit this window, and if you're in the morning hours, we're gonna get some more shadows here. And if you move down toward to the afternoon or evening, we're gonna have more light facing this facade. So make sure we know where the sun is moving. Now, if I put things on render, you can kind of see how the shadows are hitting our windows and how the building is going to look like. Please make sure that you don't have the sun straight on into our one of these facade and have it so bright that we can't see the edges. I think we need to change the background just a little bit because we don't see the line of the roof. I'm going to change that to shaded. Now, there are more settings under the render tab, and if you come down under render properties, we're going to see this window open up. Now here we can set how large your image output would be. This is a 986 by 534. What does that mean? It means that your image would have 900 pixels, around 900 pixels by 500. So it's a rectangular image. You can change that to inches. Sometimes you know the size of the image you want to have. So for example, if you're doing a portfolio, you can type in your custom size, like if your image has to be 10 by 12, or if you're doing a big board, just like the one that are outside on the walls, like if you're doing a big board, those images should be a lot larger. What does DPI mean? DPI means drop per inch. So how many pixels per inch of your image has how many pixels are in 1 inch of your image. So the larger this number, the better quality of an image you get. But think about it this way. Sometimes you don't need to, you're not looking at the image so close up. So this number can stay at a smaller or like 72. Or if you're presenting something, a very large image, and people are going to look close and come to see the detail, this number has to get at least to 300. So the larger this number gets, the longer the rendering takes. Again, I'm going to repeat this. The larger the number gets, the longer the rendering takes. And don't set this to 400, 300 and wait hours for a rendering that it's only a study to show it to your professors. So you have to be very smart about these settings because you don't want to spend 5 hours doing one rendering and then your professor says, oh, this is not good, you got to change this, and then again. So be smart about this. If you're presenting something close up, this number should get higher. If you're doing a study, don't worry about it. But your last or your final rendering, you can come back and change the setting to a larger number. The 300 is for a bigger image and with detail, sharper shadows, sharper lighting you get. 72 is for a smaller images that you're looking at it from far away. 150, 170 is for images that it's kind of like not too far, not too close. So we're gonna keep it at 72 just for now because we want to get renderings really quickly. I'm gonna change this to maybe 16. We want to get things maybe 800 by 600 is fine. Now here we're gonna look at the backdrop color. I usually like to keep it as a solid color. Some people like to do a gradient so it looks like a sky. But I like it because I usually go into Photoshop and change the background to a really nice sky that matches our surrounding if I'm doing exterior. So I keep it in solid color, but I like to change the white to just a tad gray. Not too much, just a little bit gray so we can see the edges. If you like, you can click on transparent background so it's easier to drop the sky in Photoshop. You can keep that as an option turned on. But for today, I'm going to turn it off, but you can definitely try that out. The rest, you can keep that on. We're going to say sun. We just set up the sun. Skylight means that the global lighting within the environment of your Rhino. Imagine if your sun is behind the clouds, but you still get a global lighting. That's what it means. It's going to create a global lighting, but the sun is going to actually create the shadows for you. So usually keep the skylights on. We're going to look at the intensity later. Now we're going to get more options that would go down to this window. These are the options that sometimes we do need to have. Sometimes you do want to get the curves, like if you're doing a diagram, you do want to see the edges as dark as possible, so you do want to check that, render curves. If you want to, for some reason, get the isocurve. Isocurves are the lines that we were discussing last time. So these are the isocurves that Rhino creates while making surfaces. Sometimes I've never checked this. I'm not sure if anybody had used it, but there's an option if you ever needed it. If you need to get the points, sometimes you do have a couple of points, like dotted points that you want to, on your diagrams, you want to see. There are options for it and dimension and text. So it allows you to have more options as a 2D within your renderings. And we don't need to worry about these. This gets very detailed about like how you are going to set your rendering. You definitely can look more into it, but we really don't have time to go over all these steps. Now hit OK. Now for our purpose, I'm just going to click on render. You can click on the render here or type render. And this window is going to open up for you. it's going to start rendering, and this is how long you know it's going to take. So it's going to do 50 passes of going through and creating this image, and it just had done 6 out of 50. It might take a little bit time, but as you see, our building is just a white plain building, and we don't have much of things showing. It's going to look a lot better, but since we set it up to the draft and we don't have that much pixels to create this image, it's not going to look like a perfect image. But for us, I usually recommend before adding material or anything, try out the shadows. Try out to see where your sun is hitting your building before jumping in and creating material. Setting up the lighting is the most important part of the rendering, because if you don't set that up correctly, people would know that this is completely a fake image. If you want to make it photorealistic, knowing how the light hits your building is very important. All right, now I'm gonna go back, hit yes. Something that I usually like to set up with the new Rhino, seems like they figured this out. You don't really need to make a plane underneath your work. But I still recommend doing that, because sometimes the reflection of this ground plane hits your building and it looks much better. And what I do is that the command is called infinity plane, IP plane. Or, I mean, if you forgot this, that's totally fine. You can simply come in and go to the surface, come here and draw a plane. Now, this plane has to be on a different layer. Um, Seems like the intensity of our lighting is a lot, so it's washing out every single detail, and we don't really see anything except the outline. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm coming to the light tab, and as you can see, anything that based on lighting is in our model is going to show up here. Now the intensity is over here. Let's just grab it. So the intensity and the color of all these lights can change. I think 1 is a lot, so I'm gonna put it on 0.5, maybe half of what we were seeing. And then we can come back to we can either double click here to get access to the options that we were looking at, the render properties, or we can go back to render properties, and then under skylight, you can change the intensity to something lower, maybe even lower than that. Okay, now let's see if we render this. Now you can see the building a lot better. You can see the shadows, and do you guys see, like, these are all the pixels that create our image? So the higher the sample or the DPI is, the better and the sharper image we're gonna get. So you can come in and let's put that at 150. Let's change the draft quality to good quality. And if I render this, it's gonna take a little longer than what it should. So as you see, instead of the 50 passes, it's gonna do 500 passes. So a 500 bucket of paint is going to create all these shadows. And as you see, it keeps changing as I'm zooming in. It gets better and sharper image. All right, so we have the basic right now. We're looking at our building. The shadows looks fine. There's no edges that is burning. I think we're happy with this, but now we're gonna jump into our, I'm gonna stop this. We don't need to see. the whole thing. Now we're going to learn how to add material to our building, or how do we set up so this becomes a wood siding or stone brick, whatever material you want to choose. Under your layers, there is a column that is called material. Under material, you can select any of these layers and add material to it. Let's move from glass. I'm going to click on the glass material column, and automatically this window will open up. Under here, as a default, Rhino has a couple of options for us that the material is already made. I recommend you guys start from the glass here. Creating two things is very, very complicated, glass and water. If you don't set the glass and water to a good realistic view or the material, people would know right away that this is not a photograph, it's actually a rendering, and it's computer based. I'm going to start from the glass here. I'm going to click on the glass. Once I choose the material, there's a thumbnail that explains how the light is going to shine onto our material, and in the dark how it's going to look like. It's going to let us to create a frosted glass, or I can add more transparency to our glass and keep it clear. I like to give a tint of some sort of color to our glass. You can add like a gray. I like to go very, very light blue. Even sometimes I even come back and change the light to lighter, but for now let's just try to see how it looks like. And I'm gonna hit OK. So anything here should look transparent. I'm gonna zoom in just to show you guys, and we can render really quick. Let's take a look. Yep. I think we need more clarity in our. It was too frosty. There you go. So we can see a little bit of tint of blue. We can see it's reflecting just like how the glass should reflect. And as we go on and add material, it's gonna look much better. Now, how do I choose material for our facade or the walls? I'm gonna come into the material for my walls. And for today, maybe we just use wood siding, or in the video, I chose to use wood siding, but we can do brick, um, any sort of material you think of. So since I've done wood siding, we can use brick today. I usually come in on Google, brick, texture. I'm going to go under images, and we're going to choose an image that is large enough that it can repeat itself over and over, or and also it doesn't have like a dent, like, or kind of like a shade of difference into it. We want something very, very plain, and it doesn't have like a detail that it can, when it's repeat itself, we are going to know that this is an image that's repeating. I'm going to go under tools and make sure the size is large, because we do need a large file or large image in terms of pixels. If you don't have a large image, once you render your image, your material will look like pixelated. So at least 1,000 pixels by 1,000, or the size of your image should be that large. Larger the better. So you can get a more detailed image and it doesn't look like pixelated. What we do with this image is that Rhino is going to pick this image and copy paste it over and over, just like how we do um, um, how we paint the wall. But imagine your roller has this image on it. So from edge to edge, it's going to choose and repeat this image over and over. So the better this image is, um, the easier we can have. Don't choose the one that has like stamp on it because you can see it. Sorry, one second. Now let's see. This doesn't look that good. This is too small. Um, this has like this kind of, so if it repeats itself, this doesn't look good. Maybe this one is a good one. It's large enough, sort of. It's good for our facade. So I'm going to go in and save the image as. We can save the image as a JPEG, but before we save it anywhere on our computer, make sure that you know where you're saving it. I usually create a folder and save all the images, all the materials I'm going to use into this folder, because what Rhino does is going to create a link from this image to your file. And if you don't have this folder with your file at the same location, you won't see the material in a different computer. So make sure you save your Rhino file and your material in one folder, so when you open them up, you can see every material and you can render it. But for now, I mean, I'm just going to save it on our desktop. Now I'm going to go back to my view. And this time, I am going to create a custom material. So under custom, I'm going to name this. I changed the name to brick. And then over under custom setting color, there's an option that I can assign texture. So I'm going to go find that image and click on it and open it up. Once I click on that image, you can see that the thumbnail look like a brick. You can also start adding more detail into your work. These are more detail of how you can create a better material, but it gets into more depth, and I don't think we have that much time, but if you do, I'm going to go over them. You can add gloss to your material. You can add reflectivity. I mean, brick doesn't have reflectivity, but I just want to show you guys how shiny it gets once we change the reflectivity. You can make it transparent. So these are the options that you can play around to create a better material. Now I'm going to hit OK. And if I do a render view, I am going to see my building as brick. The brick size, yeah, the brick size is huge, and it's also not going, the pattern should not go vertical. We want it horizontal. And what is the best way to fix this? Select the image or the object. You can also select the object within that layer and go under properties. Under properties, now that we added material, we're going to see a bunch of other options. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go under texture mapping. Under texture mapping, you're going to look at your object. Is it a solid? Is it like just a plane? Is it a cylinder? Or is it a sphere? Ours is more a solid, just like a box. So we're going to go under apply box mapping. You're gonna get more options over here, but we're just gonna hit enter. Then it's going to ask us about the seaplane, enter, and then now it's showing the boundary of how large this object that was selected looks like. This is the boundary. We're gonna say cap yes, hit enter. Now automatically it's going to see and measure things based on the image we imported. It automatically rotated it. It automatically um, made this image to fit within this object. But what if we still didn't want this size? What if we want the brick to look just a little smaller? How do I fix that? Over at the same tab under texture mapping, we have an options here. These numbers modify the size of this image. So if I come in and change that to different size, you can see that things got smaller. If I put 30, you can see that the image is actually changing. So you can come in and change and stretch your image the way that you want it to look like. So for us, I think 10, let's do 10.
Can we lock the XYZ so you just type in one and they all go? Right?
I think so. I think you can do that. So our image automatically rotated, but what if we want to rotate it back to the vertical? Over here, UVW rotation is actually the XYZ of our image. So XYZ is the environment of your Rhino, but UVW is the axis of your image. And if I turn that to 90, you can see that the image rotates. I put it back to 0, it will rotate back in. Okay. So these are the basic steps to create the material. So what if I want to change that to a different paint? Our window layer has, maybe we come here, we put it on paint. Under paint, we can change the color. So we can go with light gray. I mean, I'm just checking, changing things. It's whatever you guys choose. We can even do a metal. So you get a metal frame. We can go under metal. Under metal, you can see that the metal becomes a very glossy finish, but you can do chrome, silver. Now under metal, you can also change how polished you want the metal to be. Do you want it to be very reflective, very shiny, or you can change it to become a matte metal? It depends on how you want it to look like. Now, I already orbited around my view, and the good thing about it is that I saved that view first, and I can go back and the camera moves exactly where I set it up from the beginning, and I can render this again. So now we added some material. It might take a little time to finish the work. But as I said, so this image itself, see that we can read through the line where it's repeating. This is where it starts repeating. This is the bumps on the image that we don't really like to see in a render. It makes it really weird. What you can do is that you can go into Photoshop and fix all this and also fix this line. So when it repeats itself, it doesn't create that really thick line between the two image. Or you can pick a new material color, material image. So it doesn't create that. Brick is a little bit harder than other material because it's hard to really find a good image for it. Yeah, this is not good. It's not good. If you, for example, like the image itself, you can always go in and um, take it to Photoshop, change the color, and then apply it into your material. I'm gonna change this so we can see how it looks like. So under brick, I'm gonna come in and change the texture to the new brick. As you can see, this is repeating again. So um, we can also, I mean, I didn't go over this through the video, but this is something that you can also use. It's called mapping widget. That's the command. Um, and if you hit enter a couple of times, you can see that where the image actually starts. So this is how large the original image is. And what I can do is that I can move the start and the end of this. So see when I'm moving this, you can see that line, that darker line moves or the brick moves. You can also say start from here, start from lower, and you can see that how that line moves up and down. You can even scale this in one direction and make the image to be scale up larger or smaller. All right, so this is the first steps of how you can start your rendering. Now, any question? We're good for now? So if I come in and change the sun angle, or the date, you can see how the sun and the shadows is hitting my building. You can study this a lot better when you have the sun, and you can see how um, your facades and how the exterior is going to be affected by the sun. So changing the sun, rendering it again, and you can see the shadows. You can change the intensity of your lighting again based on the image you want to get. Yes.
So in the other image, not this one, not the actual render, um, on the windows, you have some like extra purple and stuff hanging around. Is that just extra curves?
Yes, these are the curves, and since we have the setting not render the curves, we have this option not checked. It's not going to render that as a final image. But once you hit that, it's going to render that image and those lines so we can see. See, it's rendering those now. As I said, this is a really good option when you're doing a diagram because you do want to see and keep those lines. Okay, let's take that off. All right, now we are going back to our view. We're going to render this really quickly and know how to save this because you need to take this to Photoshop and make it a lot better. You can also add grass onto your plan here. You can create a grass image and just exactly the same way how we did the brick, you can add grass and just have grass around it. You can add the roof texture. We're gonna wait just a little bit. Yes.
This is an excellent demonstration of Rhino. I use the word demonstration because I'm not going to learn all that
Yeah,
in a short period of time.
exactly. Yeah.
So where did you learn
Oh,
this? Was it in a
um,
classroom or was it Self-taught.
self-taught. And then mostly at school mostly, and then at work.
That's,
School and work, yeah.
okay.
But you guys are lucky because you're taking this class, so
Well,
you learn just
beginning to see the
starting, yeah,
demonstration
yeah.
of Rhino, and
We're gonna
what,
apply materials.
and what it can do.
Yes, exactly.
But I'd be pushed beyond my limits
Oh,
to
absolutely.
learn everything that you just showed us.
Yes.
This is like a class within itself. Maybe not one semester, maybe multiple.
Oh yeah, I mean this renderings can be very very time consuming. So I think this is done. This image, if I can make it larger. So this image was done in Rhino render, and it's a decent image. It does show everything that I'm sure the designer wants to show. There are many rendering engines that you can use and create a lot better photorealistic images. Like for example, a lot of these are done in V-Ray or Lumion, that it becomes a very photorealistic images. But these images, like for example this one, you can certainly get like 20, 30 hours of work to get this.
To get to that image.
Yes.
But I'm thinking that would take longer. There are firms within the US, more so international firms
Mhm.
and overseas. I've worked with many architects and asked them to do renderings, and their response, well, that would take 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh yeah. If you
And
want
what they
the
were
more
doing is sending it.
the
sending
file to
The
them,
project overseas.
yes, outsource it.
And,
Yeah.
and they would do the rendering, and 2 weeks later, you get an image like that. And I was always asking why so long, because I didn't understand the process. This is a better insight into that process
Mhm.
and why it takes so long, because it's very tedious.
It is very tedious, and as you can see here, like how the light is very realistic.
Yes.
You can totally believe that that was a sun hitting and shining through your materials here. The reason why it used to take a lot longer is that the rendering engines or the software that we were using weren't that good. But now with the gaming technology, for example, like a lot of firms that I know, they're using a gaming software to render things. It's a lot faster and it's a lot easier to use. It's more user friendly. You can get the image a lot faster.
So within an architectural firm, assume that there is a special group or a group of folks
Mhm.
that specialize in just.
Yep,
this-
exactly.
this.
Yes, yes. I mean, there in our firm, there's a person that does most of these renderings, and I mean, I'm part of the group that does the rendering, but I think he does magic. I always tell him like you do a very good job in making, I don't know. So this is a rendering. This is not an image.
See, that would be too realistic for me.
Hmm.
That's a building that exists.
Yeah.
I want to show. it
This is
as
a
building
yeah.
to be built.
To be built. Yeah, you want like these are all images, but that is a rendering that he had done. So he does a really really good job at like creating a very photorealistic images. Like these are all this is a rendering. This is not built at
So
all.
how long would it take him to do something for a building that size?
I think this will get a week to get done.
A week?
Yeah, to get all the detail. But he's using this software that he's using is a very old version. But like if he
Oh,
wants to
Rhino?
do it, no. It's V-Ray that uses Rhino. But if he want to do it now, it's a lot faster. Based on the new software. Like these are done a lot faster. So all these images were done in 1 week. You know,
Wow.
it depends on which software we're using. Like all this are rendering that we have done in the office.
So there is not, to your knowledge, a school or a class specifically that teaches this
No,
level of rendering?
no,
Pretty
it's
much
just
all self-taught and self,
correct.
and
It's
experience and skill.
yes, it's very trial and error of understanding when and how to create and what is how to how your eyes see things and how you can incorporate that into the rendering. Like how much reflection you want to see in this glass, and how much versus the lower glass, how much reflection this has to have, because it's further back, it has less light hitting it. So like you gotta understand the material. You gotta like look at things and how matte things are, how shiny things are in reality. Then you can actually create those fake ones on
So you
computer.
almost have to be an artist.
Yes, you have to. Like for example, this one, because I was doing this and I wasn't really good at it back then, I think it took me a lot of time. Like maybe I spent like a 60, 80 hours of on this one, but then later on I learned a lot more. So it became a lot faster to get things
And
done.
you've been at it for how long now?
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
I'll be a really old man by the time I get to that.
No, you get there. As I said, like this is, I don't know, 4 years ago. So as we moved on with this new software, it's much faster to get, for example, this one.
So
The
you took that and started in Rhino,
we started
and
from
then you
Rhino.
moved
Yeah.
into some other software
Correct.
to polish it up.
Correct, yes. And polishing it up now, it's a lot faster. As I said, with the gaming software, things move on way faster. Way faster.
Now, is he doing this on a laptop?
No, on a
On a
computer,
PC?
yeah.
This is more powerful.
Yes, exactly. Like these are very sketchy ones. We don't do those for the final rendering, but these are just talking through like this is Rhino and Photoshop. So we just apply the material and then just some filters.
That
So
would be a good presentation, in my opinion, to present to a client.
correct,
To give them a general idea of what this building is going to look like.
yeah,
And that's a really nice rendering, so but that's the goal in architecture school, is to look like that, not
Yeah.
like the fine.
yes,
And then they want to
exactly.
publish something, then we can take it to a few steps
Correct.
higher
Yes,
to give it more realistic.
exactly. So there are different rendering type that you can.
And can we go on to the roof, so we have some time to find
Oh,
some?
I'm sorry. Yes. All right. Let's take. So this is done, and I think everything looks fine except that we haven't picked a material. We haven't picked a material for the roof. Let's go on the roof. So again, we can choose a different material for the roof, or we can choose one that exists here. For the video that I did, I think I chose a metal. I mean, obviously we're not going to have a metal. We can use wood if you. Just picking material. It doesn't have to be these that I'm choosing. Um, Again, we can choose any sort of material we want. We're going to check the size. This looks fine. I'm going to quickly save the image as, and then go in. I mean, as I said, we don't have to do these materials that I'm using. Please make sure. Oops. I'm going to go under custom. I'm going to change this to wood. I mean, obviously, roof doesn't have this type of material, but now I'm going to go to assign texture. Choose the material that I wanted to use for the roof. We can add a little bit of glossiness or type in, I'm going to go to a little bit of glossiness, a little bit of reflectivity just to see how it looks like in the rendering. maybe more reflectivity so we can look at it more. Now I'm going to hit OK. Now it did apply the material to the roof layer, but again, just going over quickly of how we can change the orientation. Um, layers, we're going to add mapping box to it because it's a solid form. Oops, sorry. Mapping, hit enter, C-plane enter, and then enter. Now we can change the size. Let's see if lock works. No. It goes with the ratio, yeah. 20, I don't know, 30. You can even rotate it. Do 30. And then do that for this one. We can do.
So can you just pick the front face and change the front face?
You can't do face, but you can deselect this face and apply the material to it and then adjust that. But
You can just select the
yes,
fascia and change. the
correct,
material.
yes. But you can't, if you select the whole solid form, you can't just change this.
You can do surfaces.
Yes, or you can create a new surface and do that. We can do 20, 10, and change the angle to 30.
Why are your bricks showing in through the window?
She's looking
You're
through.
looking
I'm
through the
looking
building?
through the, yeah,
So
You're
you
looking at the
got
wall
click on the
inside.
inside.
all the walls
Okay.
are. Now, if we need to change the inside texture, you have to come in and select the, hold on. So what we're gonna do here is you have to come in and select these surfaces separately and extract it kind of from the solid form. Then this is the way that you can apply the different material to the inside of this house. So what I'm gonna do is I selected these walls from the interior. I'm gonna type in extract surface and place these in new layer.
And then you
Add
can apply
a material to it, yeah. I'm gonna do paint, and let's do less glossy paint, but white.
Do a color please, so we can see it.
Mm. Okay. Right,
Now put the roof back.
and then show, you can see.
All right, so the goal is that you get materials applied to the outside and something on the roof. If you get the surfaces done, I'll write down what I'm looking for. But I think this is about as far as we can go for losing people.
Mhm.
So why don't you guys take a 15-minute break, you can stop the recording, and then if you have more on the other recording, they can